Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am 𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐕𝐄𝐑𝐒𝐀𝐓𝐈𝐎𝐍, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, live every Thursday, 7 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time sharp, right here. You're here, so you know where I'm at, YouTube. And if I'm here, Stevie Dede, Henny Dede, right? If we're here, if we're here, Henny Daddy, yo, listen me, right? Guys, welcome to another evening where we're gonna chop it up, right? Where we're gonna try to decrypt this crazy cryptic world of cryptocurrency, right? As always, you could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, so I appreciate that, right? Cheers. It's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy week. Last week when we were talking, it looked like we was up again. This week, down again. Nothing is promised to us except volatility, right? So we're gonna talk about it. But before we jump into the conversation of today, even before I raise the topic, for those of you who have not seen what the topic is today, we're gonna do some housekeeping, right? You know what it is? You know what I'm about to say? Is this your first time here? Housekeeping, the ICE rule. Me, I am not a financial advisor. This is not a financial advisory podcast. Nothing that I say here this evening, last evening, or any evening to come, or any evening that has preceded this one should be misconstrued as financial advice. Like I said, it's all about the ICE rule, right? Information, conversation, education, never financial advice. The same way we have our yak is the same way we have our crypto conversation, right? So, with everything happening in the world, globally, with everything happening in the Middle East, with us seeing all the various geographical groupings of countries seemingly more and more closing ranks, right, to deal with the global threats. I was really thinking about, how we as a Caribbean grouping, how we can support each other, how we can deal with the various issues facing our region, facing our people. And of course, everything that I contemplate goes through the lens of course, blockchain, cryptocurrency, finance in general, right? So I really, really was thinking about whether or not blockchain can actually fix some of the Caribbean economy's problems, whether or not there is a genuine case to be made for the fact that, not from a speculatory standpoint, not from a hype standpoint, not from a numbers go up standpoint, but from a genuine structural, infrastructural perspective, whether or not blockchain can bring value to the Caribbean as a region, not just to one country, but to all of us, right? And we all know that the Caribbean has real problems, right? Especially as it relates to finance, especially as it relates to our economies. Of course, we know we have a slow payments environment. We have expensive remittances. We have fragmented regional trade. And maybe the most dire problem is that we have inefficient government systems. And then we have a multitude of governments, we have a multitude of currencies, right? So if we strip away all the noise, I think the Caribbean is actually one of the most perfect environments in the world for blockchain adoption, right? We have small populations, we heavily reliant on cross-border flows, we have high currency friction because all of us have a different currency, and in many cases, because of our historical socio development, we have low trust in systems. We have some of the highest rates of unbanked and underbanked people in the world, and it's because we have low trust in the intermediary systems that support our economy, right? So today I want to break down this idea a little bit more detail. We're going to look at where the Caribbean stands today, what's already being tested, and what is the real blockchain powered Caribbean, what a real blockchain powered Caribbean could look like. So, first of all, right, let's deal with the what's the word? Let's deal with the white elephant in the room. The Caribbean does not lack potential, right? We've always known it. We have the most talent for a small region. We've dominated in sport, we've dominated in education, beauty, everything, culture, artistry, everything. We've dominated at some point. So we have never lacked for potential. Where we often fall down, and I'm talking about from our sports all the way down the line. And this is something that I would say I've, lamented about, especially in the Trinidad and Tobago football environment, is that we lack proper systems, right? Systems always come home to be the main problem area. So if you're going to do business across islands right now, we know payments take days, not even across islands, sometimes within your own island, payments take days. We have significant issues with forex conversions. Forex conversions oftentimes eat away at the margins that would ultimately bring profitability to companies, to businesses that would allow for them to expand, grow, scale. And regional trade is way harder than it should be, right? I mean, even sending money to the US, right? From the Caribbean, it's still expensive, it's still slow. Sending money throughout the Caribbean, you still have to send it to the US first or through a US intermediary bank. And the irony is that we geographically, we are so close together, but financially so incredibly fragmented. Now, when you layer on top of that, we are import dependent, tourism driven economies, and we have limited access to global capital. How can we, as individuals, really step out and do anything special? And this is why I say we have to start looking at whatever opportunities as more of a collective, and we have to figure out how do we get the region that is constantly leaking value to retain as much of that value, right? So I think the real question becomes what kind of infrastructure could actually fix these problems that I've been identified, right? And I think this is where blockchain really starts to make sense, and not from a buzzword. I think a lot of people get caught up behind Bitcoin and Ethereum and blockchain and crypto as buzzwords, but I'm talking about not the tokens necessarily, but the infrastructure that comes along with the blockchain environment. Now, at its core, blockchain gives you three things: transparency, speed, and trust without intermediaries, right? And those are some of the things that I think impact those challenges that I would have outlined before. So imagine instead of going through multiple correspondent banks, you could settle payments instantly across borders. instead of reconciling records across different governments, there's one shared immutable ledger that everybody in the region has access to, right? Instead of waiting days for transactions to clear, you're operating at almost real time in terms of those transactions. So, and that is not even just theoretical, that is already happening globally. So what is stopping us here from participating like that? The question is whether the Caribbean is going to adopt early, or are we gonna, as per usual with technology, play catch up, right? So let's bring it back home to the reality on the ground. The fact is, we are not starting from zero, right? We have the sand dollar in Bahamas, one of the first fully deployed central bank digital currencies in the world. We also have Bcash in the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And no, I'm not by any means saying that either of these are perfect, or I even recommend the route that they have taken. But what I'm saying is, like I said, we are not starting from zero. There have been issues with adoption challenges, there have been issues with technical transitioning, and there has been mainly a lot of issues around actual usage. But I think that has come down to feelings in communicating to the appropriate, I don't want to say market, because I don't want to take this from a business perspective, but the actual users, the people who you want to be using these tools. I think these tools have not been appropriately communicated to those persons in terms of how they actually solve the problems that we are experiencing here in the Caribbean. But that's not the point. The point is this: the Caribbean is already experimenting with digital financial infrastructure. So we are not necessarily as behind as we think, right? We are still early stage. Yes, we could be further along, but considering what some of the biggest economies in the world have been doing, we are not nearly as far behind as we could be, right? So where can blockchain actually make a difference? First and foremost, I think cross-border payments, right? I think this is one of the biggest ones. Imagine a business in Trinidad paying a supplier in Barbados instantly with minimal fees. That's huge. A business in Jamaica paying one in Grenada, and especially as we see regional travel really, jumping up. Imagine being able to move through the Caribbean without the various, what's the word, the various hindrances to be able to operate for all the carnival related businesses, for all the promoters that move across the various islands for the various carnivals. Imagine being able to do business across the Caribbean without having to worry about that cross-border trade hindrance. No correspondent banks, no long delays, right? We could really unlock regional trade at a significant level. And then remittances. Obviously, we all know that this plays a huge part in terms of the economies in the Caribbean. Remittances make up a significant part of our GDP. And imagine us being able to do that with low fees, faster settlement, direct wallet to wallet transfers. You no longer have to go into lines. I wouldn't call the different businesses that do that kind of thing, but going lining up in a grocery store or in a mall or something to be able to receive funds that your mom, your aunt, your granny, whoever sent from overseas. Imagine them being able to send those funds directly to your wallet, and you being able to access 99 point something percent of those funds without the huge fees associated, where 10, 15, 20% of the funds being remitted being lost to fees, right? And then I think one of the big ones that I think nobody really talks about in terms of opportunities for us with blockchain in the region is in terms of land registry and property ownership. I think blockchain can significantly reduce fraud associated with titles, improve transparency, and obviously speed up transactions as it relates to land ownership, right? And that would be a game changer in the Caribbean. I know in Trinidad and Tobago, especially where I'm from, where deed searches, title searches are such a headache, right? And because it's so challenging, oftentimes it's not even worthwhile to go and get your deeds and your titles, land titles regularized so that you could, really benefit from that land, because now it's not in your name. You can't borrow against it. You can't develop it in the way that you want to. And all of those things hold us back, hold back our economies. So I think, that is one area that I think blockchain would play a huge part in. And then obviously government payments, efficiency around government payments. Yes, we have to be concerned with, tax collection, but I think social grants, I think, we all concerned about corruption within our governments. I think public sector transparency is a huge area that blockchain can improve on. Do our leadership have the political will to implement those things so that they are held accountable? Now, that's a totally different conversation. But the idea is that blockchain has the opportunity to reduce all those leakages, provide greater accountability. And I think in small economies like ours, those things matter. The millions of dollars being lost through corruption, through leakage, those can have significant impact on the social and economical realities on the ground for most of the people. So obviously, we want to see that happen. And I think broader than that, I think the big idea is having a Caribbean digital economy where, like I said, we are operating as one group in one pack. We have the Eurozone, we have the Asia Pacific zone, we have all these different groupings where they are not just military alliances or whatever, but they're real trade and development support systems for each other. And I think we have to stop thinking island by island, right? We have to start thinking regionally. We have to start thinking about what a Caribbean digital economy stack actually looks like. A regional settlement layer powered by blockchain, interoperability across digital wallets across islands, stable coins or digital currencies backed by financial institutions or real world assets, and then smart contracts that is helping trade and commerce to be developed and engaged with across the region. And I think what that leads to is that the opportunity for CARICOM to become not just a political or trade bloc, but a real digitally connected economic system. And for me, I think that's the opportunity. Now, of course, we have to be real. It's not all upside, right? There are challenges, of course, right, in terms of implementation. Regulations still evolving. Each country within the region has their own regulatory framework for digital currencies, for blockchain. Obviously, we know governments move like molasses. Everything takes forever for decisions to be made, and then for implementation to happen, that is even longer. We talked about the trust. Some of the people who have trust issues with the institutions, they too have trust issues as it relates to digital systems, because oftentimes it's the older people, the people who are prefer to keep their money under their bed, under their mattress, as the case may be. And of course, the big one we know, as we've seen with what is happening with the Clarity Act in the US right now, financial institutions may resist disruption. We know in the Caribbean, especially in our institutions, they do not like change. But for some of the institutions, they operate in more advanced jurisdictions as well. So hopefully some of that starts translating into the region, and that resistance to change, the resistance to disruption is not as big a deal as it could be. But I think the biggest hindrance to this actually working is our ability to execute. That is where we fall down. We are great ideas people, we are great planners, but when it comes to execution, for whatever reason, things fall down. So having an idea is one thing, but I think building the infrastructure, getting the adoption, and then, implementing that infrastructure and adoption, I think that is something else entirely. So, can blockchain fix the Caribbean economy? I think not by itself, but I think being part of a broader shift in regional infrastructure, absolutely. I think it plays a huge part. It could play a huge part, and I think it has to play a huge part because this is where the world is going. So I think we in the Caribbean, we have a choice. We can stay fragmented, stay dependent, stay inefficient, or we could build something that actually works for all of us, faster, cheaper, more connected, and maybe for once we could build something for ourselves, not imported, but built by Caribbean minds for Caribbean people, working together amongst each other to really execute on something special. It may happen in my time. It may happen when I'm retired. It may happen when I am providing fertilizer for the soil. But I think this is something that we absolutely need to see happen here in the Caribbean. That's just my 2 cents, right? So thank you as always for spending some time with me. Thanks for sharing a drink with me. As always, remember to drink, drive, and degen responsibly. See you guys next week. Enjoy the long weekend. Stay safe on the nation's road, wherever you are in the world. Right? I want to see you guys next Thursday. Illuminati OUT out. Guys, be blessed. Cheers.